that it's worth it.
Could you have a look at my inventory?
The unstoppable rise of Counter-Strike. Boom. I want to go cozy vibes.
Wahoo Act Man here. And recently, Valve announced Counter-Strike 2 in the most Valve way possible.
I've never seen this guy do anything with CS, so this will probably be normie take, no? It's mid. Let's have a look.
Single tweet that said Counter-Strike 2 and a video about new smoke grenades. This in and of itself was enough to light the internet on fire as sweaty op users flooded the streets. After many years of anticipation, Counter-Strike 2 is official. Valve time is real, man. Check out this clip from 12 years ago.
When are you going to release Counter-Strike 2?
We have to ship Portal 2, and then we have to ship Dota 2,
Bro.
and then we'll worry about Counter-Strike.
But are we going to see it or not?
I can't say.
In just a couple weeks.
Do you think at that point it was already planned? 2011, that was before CSGO. Surely not.
Ago, CSGO had over 1.5 million concurrent players, beating the game's previous record of 1.3 million, which was set during the height of the COVID pandemic, when everyone was stuck inside and had nothing to do but play video games. How is this possible? Global Offensive is almost 11 years old.
I have a sticker wing diffuser and I was wondering, what do you think I should do? Should I keep it because it's rare, or should I just sell it and get a knife because of the recent knife price?
It depends on what you want to do, bro. It depends on what you want to do.
And somehow it's still breaking
decent time
records.
to sell, sure.
This game is a remake of a remake, and somehow it remains the top dog of first-person shooters. Love it, hate it, or feel completely indifferent, I think everyone is amazed by the continued success of Counter-Strike.
Terrorists win.
But why is it so successful? Why has Counter-Strike only managed to grow, despite how little it's changed over the years? How did this tactical shooter rise to prominence, and why has it maintained such a firm grip on the FPS genre? I had to know, I had to understand, and I believe I found the answers. This is the unstoppable rise of Counter-Strike.
That's the same clip! Huh? Is he so bad?
Let's go!
With the ace, first round,
I'm literally the best, bro.
But first, are you tired of cookbooks weighing you down? Want to make something other than chili every night? Throughout all of these trends, while at the same time never attempting to copy any of them. Except maybe the zombies thing, but we don't talk about that. Well, there's also Danger Zone, but apparently we don't talk about that either. Here's a great example, PUBG. It's the only other game to have a higher concurrent player count than CSGO. However, in the long run, CSGO has retained a larger, more consistent audience than PUBG. I mean, granted, there are more popular
This is still so... Bruder, PUBG was so fucking big. 3.2 million players peak. That is insane. 3 times the size of CSGO all-time peak. Or 2 times. Almost. Okay, never mind. Only 2 times. Bruder, that's crazy. PUBG is huge in China, but they didn't play it on Steam though, right? I don't know if those count towards the number. It was so huge.
Than CSGO. However, in the long run, CSGO has retained a larger, more consistent audience than PUBG. I mean, granted, there are more popular franchises like Call of Duty and whatnot, but this type of longevity, I mean, there's nothing else quite like it, in my opinion. Counter-Strike's success and popularity is nothing but a pure anomaly in the video game industry. It's a juggernaut, but just how popular is it? I mean, you really don't need me to tell you. Just for some perspective, let's go over some fun numbers. So the YouTuber Anomaly made a video going over some data, and he alleges that Valve makes $54 million per month on CSGO cases, on average.
Shut your mouth and look at my wad! Loads of money!
While Dexerto reports that all the recent buzz on Counter-Strike 2 has generated over $100 million in case sales in just the last month.
This is a journey into money.
Like, what the fuck, man? Can I get some of that money, Valve? Pay my rent, please? No doubt many are trying to unlock the most valuable skins before everything moves over to CS2, because who knows how the market is going to change. In 2018, the game made over $400 million in revenue. The average monthly player count borders between 31 and 37 million. Counter-Strike not only
And still, how the server's not working. Oh, Bruder. Oh, Bruder.
makes a shitload
Please,
of money
bro.
through arguably unethical means, but it checks all the boxes in every other category. High viewership on Twitch, popular views on YouTube, esports attendance is usually sold out. Even when there isn't a tournament, viewership on streaming
Apart from Rio, maybe sometimes.
platforms is consistently
Actually,
high.
never mind. It was
With
sold
its
out. It was just people ditched some games. Oh,
major
yeah.
championship tournaments, Valve offers prize pools up to $2 million. On esports charts, CSGO has the second highest overall prize pool payout and the fifth highest all-time peak concurrent viewers at 2.7 million. God damn. CSGO in particular is such a competent, technically sound game that one of the biggest changes Valve is making is with smoke grenades. In business, there's only one thing more important than make it better, and that's don't fuck it up. Valve hasn't fucked it up. Most Counter-Strike fans don't seem at all concerned that CS...
Oh my, it's still to me, and it's the same in the chat sometimes. I feel like normies think of CS2, oh, but it's not worth a new game. What the fuck? It is so much more than I could have ever imagined what the fucking buzz is about Source 2. Are you fucking crazy? Changed smokes completely. It looks completely different. Everything is new. Everything is new. What? It's just the people, the normies from the outside, because they don't know about the CSGO, right? That if a fucking small thing changes, a box on Dust 2, everybody goes crazy, or the orb goes from 10 to 5, the craziest change ever. And they say like, oh, but it's not worth a new title. Oh my god.
PS2 might play and feel almost identical to Global Offensive, and that's the point. They could care less. It's the same thing when Dota 2 came out. It was basically just an overhaul of a pre-existing game with minimal changes. One last thing. While looking on SteamDB, I found what is probably the most mind-blowing stat of CSGO. This, of course, depends on the time of day, but when I checked around 6 p.m. on a Monday, it said there was 4.6 million people playing video games on Steam, and CSGO had a player count of 648,000. So if you whip out your handy-dandy calculator and crunch some numbers, this equates to roughly 14% of Steam's active player base was playing CSGO. There are over 10,000 games on Steam, and just one pulled 14%. This is the largest digital distributor of video games on PC. It's just fucking insane how popular this game is. So how did we get here?
I still wonder the amount of bots of that, though. I don't know. Because you do, when you go in matchmaking, and not in matchmaking, but if you queued up deathmatch, there's always spin botters just farming cases, right? But probably not that crazy. 20%? Nah.
Well, despite its massive, insurmountable success, even Counter-Strike had its humble beginnings. With the release of Half-Life, Valve had taken the world of FPS by storm. Many fans were quick to create their own mods and custom games. Wonder where this is going? Counter-Strike began as a mod for Half-Life, developed by Min Lee and Jess Cliff. The original Counter-Strike would see its fair share of betas, slowly gaining an audience with each new one. The creators actually had to beg people to try the beta out so that they could get feedback and make adjustments.
Early on, we had to beg people to help us out. Even just to get playtesters, we had to beg people, hey, do you want to come play our mod? And a lot of people would be like, no thanks, not interested. So we just kind of put it out.
It's the same with CS2, bro. They begged me to play it. They begged me to give me access, I swear to God, bro. It's the same with you guys. No, nobody wants to play that, bro. And it's like now, they're missing... it's the same all over again. I didn't even know that they had the same problem with CSGO. That's crazy.
Out there thinking, a couple hundred people might think it was cool.
But by the time the 5th beta came out, Counter-Strike's audience was well established, and it caught the eye of Valve, who would hire Min and Jess to work on the mod full-time as its own standalone release. And Valve would acquire the intellectual property of Counter-Strike, which... this and the acquisition of Dota 2 remain two of the
what the fuck?
biggest fucking power plays in the history of gaming. In a landscape dominated by fast-paced arena shooters like Quake and Unreal Tournament, Counter-Strike...
I'll take it after tradition, sorry.
a surprisingly bold take on the FPS format. Its design was the polar opposite of what was popular at the time, and it's a format that hasn't gone out of style, unlike Fedora's. Min Lee felt that adding rounds and making it a one life mode could create intense encounters and encourage players to work together. Like Nostradamus, his prediction was dead on, and the Counter-Strike community continued to grow and thrive. Many of the aforementioned arena shooters may have seemed daunting to players new to first-person shooters in PC gaming, but Counter-Strike was extremely simple and accessible, and it was this simplicity that drew in casuals. But because it was hard to master, it drew in hardcore gamers too. A modern setting of Counter-Strike pitting terrorists against counter-terrorists also made it stand out from the crowd, when most other shooters, including Half-Life, had a more sci-fi setting. The release of CS 1.0 saw the beginning of the game's competitive scene, and the addition of a spectator mode back then, it was a pretty big deal. The final major version of Counter-Strike, 1.6, created a huge surge of interest in the game and began what many believe was the first golden age of Counter-Strike and the birth of modern-day esports as we know it. The first big tournament was hosted in 2001, and it offered a prize pool of $150,000. Pretty substantial for the time.
Bro, and Asian TV was, oh my god. They were there from the beginning.
$1,000. Pretty substantial for
Half-Life
the time.
TV.
And every year since then, the series has had countless tournaments. Counter-Strike struck gold. In many ways, it pioneered esports and competitive gaming and set the gold standard for what tournaments and events like these should be like. And the success of its early tournaments would set the tone for years to come. But 1.6 wasn't the only...
It's not the same? Ah, okay, it was just the... Ah, okay, never mind.
...version of Counter-Strike. We're going to talk about the versions nobody really cares about anymore. With the rising growth of consoles and Xbox Live, as well as the unprecedented success of 1.6, Valve saw an opportunity to bring Counter-Strike to console. And would you look at that, I've still got my copy.
What the fuck is that?
The #1 online PC action game in the world, now on Xbox. The results were... interesting. Visually, the game looked worse than 1.6, but I remember having a blast back in the day, and the game sold well enough for what it was. If anything, for console plebs like me who weren't big into first-person shooters on PC, it put Counter-Strike on the map. And it did mark the introduction of bots to the series. But if you didn't have access to Xbox Live, there was little point in playing it. This was the first new Counter-Strike released after 1.6, and it seems that Valve found it challenging to evolve and iterate on the Counter-Strike formula because of how fine-tuned and simplistic it was. Introduced too many new mechanics or gimmicks, and it could have disastrous results. So it's a good thing they added the tactical shield. While the console version of Counter-Strike did surprisingly well, Valve soon asked a very important question. Hey guys, what if we made a single-player campaign for... Okay, nobody gives a shit. Alright, good to know.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Counter-Strike Condition
You
0.
deaf? Bro, on my side it's silent, I swear. Is it good enough?
Aptly named because there are 0 conditions in which you should be playing this. It released less than a year before Half-Life 2 and CS Source, and, well, it failed to impress. The game was handled by 4 different studios and went through development hell, so it makes sense. Valve had little to do with it, so it didn't have a huge impact on their reputation, but fans of 1.6 quickly noticed that there wasn't much to draw them in. So Condition 0 has been left largely forgotten, and
I've never played these old titles, man. Oh, the OG's viewers will remember, bro. Do you remember when I mentioned that we should do like... Bruder, we have so many scrapped ideas where... playing one of the old games every single week, you know, and then we go next week, we go 1.6 and then Condition 0 and Bruder. And we set up like servers and do viewer games. Bruder. Oh. We kind of have to do that, bro. Like a week of nostalgia, you know?
To keep it that way. It remains, however, the only Counter-Strike game with a single-player campaign. Half-Life 2 showed off Valve's new Source engine in a way that blew people's minds. And like the original Half-Life, it spurred the creation of a new Counter-Strike. The release of Counter-Strike Source served to modernize the game with Valve's revolutionary Source engine, and it served as a flagship title for what was a relatively new gaming platform at the time, Steam. It was essentially nothing more than a remake, but the player base became somewhat fractured, as many didn't agree with changes to the core gameplay. Flashbangs were made more powerful, and new recoil patterns had fundamentally changed the fine-tuned gameplay they were used to. I think this was one of the first major examples of the Counter-Strike community being very, very resistant to change, which does explain how little has changed.
Source blows my mind that people have almost kind of omitted it from Counter-Strike history. It did have some issues at launch, I don't think there's any doubt about that, which did turn a lot of the people off, because obviously if you've got an existing game that's been out for years and it's great and everything works perfectly fine because it's been tweaked, and then you've got something new and it doesn't quite work, obviously you're gonna stick to the one that you know and stick to the one that you feel is complete.
Counter-Strike Source did something very, very important though. It introduced a concept that would end up earning Valve billions of dollars. Skins and cosmetics. Apart from just being flashy ways to express yourself, Valve allowed a whole new wave of creativity, as any player could retexture maps, player models, weapons, skins, etc. It was clear that Counter-Strike would innovate through its aesthetics more so than radical gameplay changes. So pro players were kind of torn between focusing on the aging version of 1.6 and this new version that was somewhat divisive. Still, CS Source kept the train rolling towards something greater, and there were tons of tournaments. The game certainly didn't fail. It still had a very successful competitive scene, but there was a lot of controversy surrounding it and its changes. Source also saw a huge boom in community servers and custom games, surfing maps that have become iconic to the franchise. From its initial creation to 1.6 to Counter-Strike Source to Global Offensive, and I'm sure CS2, Counter-Strike has and always will be a game driven by its community. As many of Valve's titles were created by modders, Counter-Strike itself is very modular. Who would have thought? Valve has certainly leaned into this community support with mods, custom skins, and they even promote items that fans can vote on if they should be added to the game. User-generated content like this ensures that should you ever get bored of the standard game modes, there's always something wild and wacky to check out. The Counter-Strike community is definitely one of the most interesting, and if you hop into a match, it won't be long before you hear some fun conversations.
He's right in front of me, I heard him.
Oh my god, is that a gamer girl? Princess, could you speak? Excuse me, gamer girl. Watch this. Miss Gamer Girl, watch this. Excuse me, Gamer Girl, did you see that?
There's a massive community for custom maps, surfing, roleplay, hide and seek, jailbreak. The Steam Workshop hosts over 100,000 independently created maps. Some are better than others, but once you play hide and seek in Shrek's Night House, well, I mean, everything else just looks worse in comparison. The Counter-Strike community could essentially be summarized in that classic door stuck clip.
Cheat on your man, homie. I tried to sneak through the door, man. Can't make it. The shit stuck. I don't know what I tried.
Bro, we need this back where the mouth is moving, man.
Wacky, goofy fun in a game that appears to be super serious. So CSGO released on August 21st, 2012, at just the right time, and fan reception was mostly positive. Though there were some rough areas of the game and balancing issues, these were quickly patched out by Valve. It's interesting to note that there are 360 and PS3 ports of CSGO, but I'm pretty sure they have literally never been updated. Like, why bother? The gameplay was straight up not tuned for controller, and they didn't even change the aiming. It's the exact same as it is on PC, so it just doesn't work. The release of CSGO came at the perfect time, when streaming was starting to really pick up. This combined with the growing esports scene and, you know, new tournaments for this new Counter-Strike game, it only made CSGO rise to greater and greater heights. The game arguably returned to the roots of 1.6, and Valve listened to the competitive community. Today, CSGO is almost 11 years old, and though it definitely shows age in the visual department, technically the game is pretty much flawless. Aiming is as precise as it can possibly be, the core mechanics remain solid. Counter-Strike as a series is laser focused on one single thing, and that's a key to its success: gameplay. You can't help but appreciate the beauty in its simplicity. There was an 8-year gap between the first trailer for Global Offensive and the second. Like, you know what I mean? Like, cinematics don't promote the game itself does that. There is no complex story. Valve isn't trying to sell you new heroes or a cast of characters. In a world where it seems like every major franchise is trying to be this multimedia juggernaut, Counter-Strike just is like, hey, play our fun game. No flashy gimmicks, no wall running or custom classes or campaigns or any of that shit. All the mainstream trends that other shooters have adopted are things that Counter-Strike has never really cared about. Therefore, it's always maintained its identity and stood out from the hordes of other shooters, many of whom have become irrelevant or have lost a substantial audience. Counter-Strike has never really tried to be something that it wasn't initially. Like, there's never been a space like Counter-Strike in space, or a medieval Counter-Strike. But that's the thing, because the game is so modular and the mechanics so competent, Counter-Strike in space does sound kind of cool. While I personally would love to see a wider variety of weapons or crazy ass map design, I'm a casual and I certainly don't think the game should be catered to me. I enjoy what's there. And because Counter-Strike doesn't need to do anything different. What it's been doing has been continuously successful. Because the game is so finely tuned.
Don't tease me like that.
The skill ceiling is massive. The lack of attachments means you have no excuse for poor aim. There are no crutches and no cripples allowed. The lack of outside factors or random bullshit makes it a purely
He's so bad! That's him, the Eggman. What the fuck?
Skill-based game. Which means pulling off some badass plays. It feels
Says you, bro. I'm not that bad. You have to be crazy.
Incredibly satisfying. And again, it doesn't have the feedback of Modern Warfare 2 where you level up and there's this badass guitar riff. You don't have points appearing on the screen when you get a kill. It is as basic as it can be. Look at the game modes too. It's very simple. Deathmatch, bomb defusal, hostage rescue. Counter-Strike is a true expression of FPS skill. I've never particularly been a huge fan of Counter-Strike, but like the bragging rights that come associated with pulling off some badass play, like that's alluring to me. Counter-Strike is the definition of easy to learn, hard to master.
We can tell.
Where most other franchises as old as Counter-Strike have tried their hand at various different things, Call of Duty in space, Halo, but it sucks. Dragon Age, but it's shitty. Mass Effect, but it sucks. Counter-Strike found what stuck and just kept that going. In fact, it's this lack of change that has made it so popular. Anybody who's ever played a video game can watch a match of CSGO and know exactly what's happening without ever touching the game themselves. Try showing someone StarCraft 2 who's never played a real-time strategy game and watch their fucking head spin as the screen is... Though I'm not as experienced in Counter-Strike, I'm willing to bet that there are individual patches in League of Legends that have introduced more game-breaking things than the entirety of...
I never thought about that. How easy it is to to understand what's going on. You could know nothing about CS. You whip up the co-stream, FaZe Clan versus Na'Vi, and you know what's going on. For me, for example, I used to play League of Legends ages ago. Now, if I would watch like a tournament or something, I don't know what the fuck is going on. The items, it's like the ultimates, like it's you have to be so much into the game. This is just click head album. You know what the smokes. You know what the smoke is. Flashback makes sense.
Counter-Strike's history. I'm willing to bet on that. Counter-Strike's lack of change is one of its greatest strengths, right? Imagine if CS2 came out and it didn't have dust. Now, one thing many people might not consider when thinking about CSGO's popularity is that it's on Valve's platforms, so it plays by Valve's rules. They've always been one of the most unorthodox game developers and publishers, but because Valve owns Steam, they can give the game as much free advertising as they want. They can promote upcoming tournaments and updates on the largest PC game store on the planet. Counter-Strike was often featured in seasonal Steam sales, which always drew in a constant stream of new players. And once Valve had sold 40 million copies of CSGO, well, they decided to transition to a free-to-play model. Again, they're just making all the right business moves. Though naturally, with a game this massive, there's going to be a
dickhead!
fair share of controversy. I'm not going to spend a long time talking about like loot
This
boxes,
guy.
lawsuits, and that sort of thing because
Gold,
ultimately
gold,
these things didn't have a huge noticeable impact on the popularity. Skins and cosmetics have become a huge draw for players, but Valve's lack of involvement in regulating gambling websites has led to a lot of shady shit. Some content creators, you might remember, would like to have you forget about a controversy they were involved in. Hey guys, it's Ackman here, and I just found this website called CSGO Lotto. I totally don't own it. You should go there and spend money. Hey guys, I just found this Patreon from a guy called the Ackman. I don't know who he is, and I don't own this Patreon, but you should go and donate. You know, Valve has had some lawsuits filed against them, and it took a long time for them to take action against these illicit websites, but, you know, these egregious, arguably unethical monetization practices didn't slow the game's popularity. Now, many thought the release of Valorant in 2020 would have a huge impact on CSGO's numbers, but no...
2020? It got released in 2020? Huh? It's just me? It feels like a much more at least 2021. Oh, jeepers. What month? Valorant release date. June! Wow, 3 years ago. Interesting.
Not really. Up until 2021, CSGO had only grown. There were some months where the numbers dipped down, but it was never for long. Until 2021, where the game's player base dipped for 5 consecutive months. The first and only time this would happen in CSGO's history. Previously, the game had never lost players for more than 3 months straight, so this was concerning. CSGO was bound to fail at some point.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
So why did it lose players at this time? Well, in an effort to combat cheaters and hackers, Valve put out an update that threw ranked matchmaking behind a paywall. This didn't go over too well with parts of the community, as it seemed like, hey, maybe improve anti-cheat or, you know, ban their IP address or something. Maybe there were just better alternatives to focus on instead of paywalling ranked. Although this decline was short-lived, and CSGO is once again back on top and breaking records. Which brings us to the current day and the release of Counter-Strike 2, which will likely further cement the game's legacy and position as the gold standard of first-person shooters. Still, it is a delicate balance to maintain, and if Valve isn't careful, CS2 could be the start of Counter-Strike's fall from grace. Unlikely as it may be, the possibility is still there.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
The unstoppable rise of Counter-Strike still amazes me after investing all this time and effort into researching, playing, and making this video. It seems like Valve captured lightning in a bottle, and rather than trying to recreate that, they've simply been remaking it. As I can't think of any other game that has changed as little as Counter-Strike maintained such a massive level of popularity. Given how resistant the Counter-Strike community is to change, it's incredible that CSGO has seen hundreds of updates over the years, and that most of them haven't pissed off the core fan base. Also, that level of support for a game almost 11 years old is quite rare. It appears that Valve doesn't want CS2 to repeat some of the mistakes Source made, and I don't expect many radical changes to happen. Few update videos they have put out have resonated with the community. From humble mod to worldwide esports titan of the industry, Counter-Strike has been a dominant force in the FPS genre for over 2 decades, and I doubt that's going to change in the next 10 years. And that has been the unstoppable rise of Counter-Strike. So thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, and subscribe to the Ackman for more awesome content.
I'm excited for CS2,
Don't forget to subscribe to HelloFresh and get yourself some incredible food and rest.
Ooh, I wanna have some updates. I wanna have more people coming into CS2. I wanna see what's going on.